in Sweden, there's a 1,500% increase in teenagers identifying as transgender or non-binary. And so Sweden, they said, hey, we need some studies, we need to figure this out. So Sweden reacted, the government of Sweden and people there, they went up in arms. They were like, what's going on? This doesn't seem right. The curve now goes way up and now it goes way back down.
Oh, wow.
And who knows where it's going to go, but they corrected it. The thing is, if it's teenagers and you see this 1,500% uptake in this going on, there's a lot of people getting swept up inside of that tidal wave. And when those folks that are in that tidal wave, when they graduate high school, when it's all over and they no longer have that peer pressure, they no longer have all those hormones running through bodies and it's all wild, and you're sitting there 22 years old and you have a job, you start really thinking, all those folks that got wrapped up in a tidal wave, what's going to happen to them? And so they keep saying they care about trans kids, they care about trans kids. They keep saying how much they care. Do they care about those people that are getting swept up? Do they care about the people that find out that this wasn't really me?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm curious. I actually want to look up the Sweden and let's look into it. Gender reassignment of children is a big experiment. Hundreds of children with gender dysphoria are subjected every year to treatment with hormones and then with gender mutilation completely without a reasonable basis in terms of science, proven experience, and often without ethical review. Professor Christopher Gilberg and others at the University of Gothenburg write this. Update May 5th, 2021. The U-turn is official. Sweden has officially ended the practice of prescribing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors under age 18. Wow, the whole country has changed on that. And Sweden is supposed to be like the country of all countries that all these lefties kind of go to. It's like, oh, look what Sweden's doing. Look what Sweden's doing. I wonder what they would say about this. They have recognized the experiment. So, to be fair, this was in 2021, so maybe in 2023 something changed. They recognize the experimental nature of treating minors with puberty blockers and hormones and have established new protocols that deviate significantly from WPATH and the professional associations that the Canadian government healthcare authorities are listening to. Yeah, Canada just does not give no fucks, bro. Canada, apparently, I saw somewhere where if a parent denies his kid gender transitioning, he can get like a charge for like $50,000 or something. I was a quick peer. I might be wrong about that, but you know, I mean, they're criminalizing this type of stuff. So Canada is wildin'. Is gender transition medically necessary? The graph below shows all referrals to gender clinics in Sweden. The inverted U-shape of the curve is extremely interesting. Referrals to gender clinics fell off a cliff in 2019. Why and why no rebound? Does the Swedish experience tell us something about the hype and potential disillusionment surrounding the practice of medically transitioning children? So this is the graph. So apparently, this is the amount of kids that are transitioning. It was going up from 2013. It peaked at 2017. Something happened. Now it's just going down and down and down. The sudden sharp increase suggests a triggering event. Certainly, the explosive growth in natal females seeking gender transition is a new phenomenon throughout the high-income countries. It has coincided with the advent of social media and the popularization of transgenderism in mainstream media and online. Swedish child physicist or psychiatrist Sven Roman has compared the explosive growth in the number of cases of gender dysphoria to other psychiatric conditions such as eating disorders and self-harm behavior. Yeah, and then it's crazy at the same time how with this gender dysphoria increasing, the amount of people who are trying to become trans are now saying that we don't have gender dysphoria, but we want to be trans. So it's like, what is going on there, right? He documents the process of discovery that the medical community went through to understand or best treat kids of conditions. Over the past decade, he says research has proven that supportive psychotherapy can reduce or stop self-harm behavior within 3 months. Of the avalanche of gender dysphoria cases being referred, he says, unlike the epidemic of self-harm behavior, care providers are not exploring to find the right treatment. Instead, on a broad front, drastic treatment with high doses of sex hormones and breast and genital surgery is introduced. This, despite the lack of any scientific evidence for these treatments for children and probably not for young adults either. Interesting. So you said adults shouldn't even do this either. To be fair, like, what is the basis to say this is supposed to be a positive when it comes to gender dysphoria? In the fall of 2019, there's 65% decline in the number of referrals to gender clinics in Sweden. This corresponds with experts calling on the government to review clinical protocols and more balanced media coverage of the phenomenon of regret among gender transitioners, including the airing of a documentary entitled Trans Train. Interesting. I'm not going to read everything here, but it's fascinating how Sweden, who's ideally supposed to be like one of the more progressive countries out there, especially with a lot of their policies, decided to go back with the gender transitioning situation. That's very fascinating. To be fair, one thing I will say, even though this is kind of something that happens to the minority of the population, I do think we should always take into account such that stuff like this, even though it affects the minority of the population, its impact is the impact of what is going on affects the majority of the population. I think we need to recognize that, because it will be one thing if, okay, this is happening for the minority of the population and they can live their life, but they have no impact on what society's doing. But that is not the case. This is happening for a minority of the population, and then it goes so far to affect media. The CEI scores affect corporations, affect discourse online. Like even though a small percentage of people actually are affected in terms of transitioning, its impact is ginormous. So I don't even think at this point it's an argument that why do people care? It's affecting a small number of people. The reason why people care is because even though it's affecting a small number of people, the impact of this situation is bigger than those small number of people. And I think we all are starting to recognize that. So I do think that sometimes conservatives think this is the most important issue in America right now, and I don't think it is. But I do think that it is something to consider, especially moving forward, as the impact of the LGBTQ stuff is growing. I mean, I read something about CEI scores. Like, there's really not much to be said after that, right?